Welcome back to the Bearcat Tip-Off Talk podcast. Your host, Alex Meacham, a former Bearcat basketball player from 1997 to 1999 under the Hall of Fame coach, Bob Huggins.
And I'm Neil Meyer of the Front Office News, a.k.a. Cincinnati Rivals.
And I'm JT Smith, editor-in-chief of the Front Office News.
All right, fellas, we are back for Season 3. Now, this is the preview episode, and we will cover the 2024-2025 Bearcat roster, schedule, and expectations for this year. We will be back with our official Episode 1 on November 18th, recapping Arkansas Pine Bluff, Morehead State, and Nicholls game, and previewing the NKU game. Now, on Episode 1, we will announce all of our new sponsors, our sponsors that are coming back. Shout out to all our sponsors. We're very, very excited. By the way, this podcast is dedicated to Dr. Jim Ellis, longtime Bearcat athletics eye doctor. He was an eye doctor for the basketball team, recently passed away. Gosh, he was an extraordinary human being. Everybody in the athletic department loved him. So rest in peace, Dr. Jim Ellis. All right, fellas, when was the last time we had this much excitement for Bearcat basketball? I mean, you can feel the energy in this city for this basketball team. Everywhere I go, I hear it. Bearcat basketball. We're pumped up. JT, I'm going to start with you, man. What are your thoughts on the energy behind this basketball team?
Man, the energy is next level. I mean, Bearcats haven't made, March Madness in a while, but the excitement that the staff and the players have generated this offseason is second to none. And you can hear like people, disrespect the football. Football is king when it comes to getting all the money. But, everybody knows when the Bearcats basketball team is one of those ones, this is a basketball school, and that's not slight to anybody. It's just the truth. So, and I could just tell, like, man, I'm doing like regular work deals, and people are like talking about the Bearcats, and it's like, hey, how good you think they're gonna be, So it's like, and I'm like, man, I think they're gonna be real good. So, they're playing top-notch competition. So for them to be able to be mentioned, a top 25 team starting off, I know that you can't win in the preseason, but this is a better place to be than, teams not getting votes and, people not expecting you to do much. So it's a good place to be.
Neil, now you're around the basketball program. You're in the pressers. You're around other sports, football. You have to feel the energy, man, when you're there from a media standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. You can feel the energy surrounding the men's basketball program just about everywhere you go. I know you go to the football games, you kind of get those questions from a couple fans when you're walking around. Oh, hey, what's the basketball team going to be like? This team's loaded with the new roster rebuild, all that kind of good stuff that you want as a fan. You get the questions. They're going to see a lot of good things this season. I mean, you felt the energy there at the charity exhibition scrimmage versus Ohio State, and fans did a great job there. I mean, anytime you get basketball in October, it's a great sight, but overall to see 13,000 people pack Fifth Third Arena for an exhibition game as well, and kind of getting the experience to see what this roster could look like was pretty exciting too. But it's an excitement. I don't think there hasn't been much excitement since 2018, 2019 when Jacob Evans, Jaron Cumberland, Trey Scott, all those guys were back at Fifth Third Arena. So I think that was the last time they made the NCAA tournament. So overall, there hasn't been much excitement in recent years as what they have right now heading into the 2024-2025 season. I know last year they had a lot of excitement, but there was a lot of uncertainties with the waiver situation, if players were going to be eligible to play and all that kind of stuff. But this year, now that there's no outside noise, no uncertain situations that you might not know what could come out of them, I think you get the healthy offseason, everyone's gelling together. You can really feel the chemistry with this team as well. And I think we've seen that through the press conferences and media days as well, that the chemistry there with this team, it's like we haven't seen in a while. This is a really close-knit group, which is going to be exciting for fans.
Now, Neil, I'm glad you brought up that Ohio State scrimmage. What a wonderful event, and I hear that they're going to do more with that in the future, maybe under one roof, get all these teams, Dayton, Xavier, UC Ohio State, maybe some other teams together. And I think it's raising money for a great charity. But with that game itself, you could see and just feel it there. The Bearcats could have won if they played their main guys. They could have won by a lot more. And listen, Bearcat, and I go around and I travel to different college games and different experiences. Man, Bearcat fans are serious, man. And they are thirsty for a good basketball team. And I think we've got the team this year. This is the team that Wes Miller has wanted for a long time, and he's really built it up. These are his guys. And you mentioned, Neil, the last Bearcat teams. I'm thinking that 2017, 2018 Bearcat team that went 31-5. They won the conference championship, the one that lost to Nevada by 2 in the NCAA tournament in Nashville. That was a team, the excitement at the start of the season for that team, this reminds me of that because remember the prior season, 2016, 2017, that team finished 30-6. And I think that was kind of like building up for that next year. So I think we have, a great mixture of talent, of experience. And listen, Wes Miller, these guys love playing for him. And that's another thing that I think is important. So let's jump to the 2024-2025 Bearcat roster. Let's go player by player. JT and Neil, I want you guys to take the lead on some of these players. So JT, I want to start with you. I think it's important we start with, I think, one of the guys who has the most talent on the team, and that's Dan Skillings.
Yeah, man. I mean, if anybody's been listening to the pod, any pod that I've been on, especially our pod, our basketball pod, which we've done the last 2 years, I've been high on Dan Skillings since he was being recruited. And, I mean, just think about it. This guy played his freshman year in the AAC. Normally you have that freshman to sophomore jump. Everybody does normally. He did, but he had to make the jump. Not in the AAC. He had to make the jump in the Big 12. And I think he was Big 12 honorable mention, I want to say. Right?
Yep.
Right? So, like, for him just to be able to make that jump in the best basketball conference in college just shows how good he is. And you could just tell he hasn't even fully scratched the surface. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of stuff that he was making. He even say, like, it's mistakes he was making last year that you'd be like, dang. But you could just see what he can do. Like, when, I guess it's a good Dan, bad Dan, but it's a lot more good Dan when you watch that young man play. So, that dude, I think he can make a real big jump. Like, him staying this year was huge for the Bearcats. And I think he can make a real big jump in his junior year.
And I agree with you, JT. And you could see as we watch him, as he matures, the maturation process year to year. And it kind of reminds me of Kenyon Martin. When Kenyon came in, he was very talented, very raw. And every year he got a little bit better. And I think for Kenyon, and I'm going to say the same for Dan, it's just one of those things where they mature and grow as a person off the court and on the court. And we're seeing that with Dan Skillings. And there'll be games where he's the leading scorer. And there'll be other games where he'll have an impact that's not scoring. And it will help the Bearcat team win. And I think that's a great segue to the next player who will have a tremendous impact. And he most likely, most games won't be the leading scorer, but I think he'll impact in a lot of different ways. And that's senior Day Thomas. Neil, thoughts on Day?
Yeah, so overall, Day Thomas now is returning for his second year, senior season. So overall, a lot of big expectations for Day Thomas. Obviously, right now, he missed some time. We found out at media days that he had the little setback there with the foot injury. But overall, Day Thomas is in for a big year as well. I mean, you're looking at the backcourt, and people kind of forget that Day Thomas flashed towards the end of the season, especially there through the Big 12 tournament. This was a guy averaging nearly 6 assists in his first year at the Division I level. So anytime you can kind of add that, he really flashed against Ohio State. I believe he finished with 9 points and about 6 assists. So anytime you look down at 11 points, it was 11 and 6. So you look down, you see 6 assists out of Day Thomas off the bench. That's a pretty good sight to see. So obviously he's in for a big senior year, but it's going to be interesting to see what kind of role he plays out there in the backcourt with guys like Jizzle James and Connor Hickman. But Day Thomas is in for a big year, and I think that's a big reason to Cincinnati's success there is the front court there and the backcourt with guys like Day Thomas. You kind of seen it throughout this offseason too, that Day Thomas has really taken the next step taking on that leadership role as well. So that's a great sight to see, especially how things didn't go his way towards the end of the season last year with the foot injury, but he's poised to be a big leader for the Bearcats this year.
And the other thing too with Day that I see is, you look at guys like Dan and Jizzle. I mean, all these guys are uber talented, but we need a vocal leader. When you look at a guy like Day who has played in Big 12 games, right? He's got experience. He's a senior. He's a little bit more mature in terms of number of games played. I think he's your vocal leader for this basketball team. And that's going to be vital. And he's one of those guys, JT, and I want to get your thoughts on this. He's one of those guys that is not a loud guy, but when he speaks, people are quiet and they listen to him. JT, your thoughts on Day from a vocal leadership standpoint?
No, for sure. He will have to be one of those guys. I feel like he's one of the people that can do it because I feel like he has respect in the locker room, even though this is only his second year there. But I think a lot of people enjoy playing with Day and respect him. So when you respect somebody, when they say something, then people are gonna take heed to it and take it to heart. So yeah, I mean, as a point guard, it's kind of like the unwritten rules where you kind of have to do it a little bit more, even if it's coming out of your shell a little bit. And I just think that Day, he's just one of those guys that do anything to win. So that's gonna be something that he just, I think, adapts. And then him being a senior, it just kind of most of the time your leaders are going to be your upperclassmen. That's just how it goes.
And one of the guys that I think Bearcat Nation is so excited to see play this year is Jizzle James coming back for his sophomore year. People were worried he was going to get in the portal. Other schools were offering him all this money. I believe I heard him say before that he was never going anywhere. He loves it here in Cincinnati. Jizzle James's role with this Bearcat team, JT.
Yeah, I think he's going to not even think. I believe, barring anything crazy, he's going to be a guy that sees a big jump, just how it was at the end of last year when Day got hurt. He was the de facto pretty much only point guard, and you saw what he did. Each game I think he had over 20 points, had a respectable amount of assists. Turnovers were a little high at the end, but at the same time, as a true freshman, to get thrown to the Wolves to have to play 35, 38 minutes, that's impressive to be able to pull that off. And Jizzle James did that with grace. I think he's just going to do nothing but get better, man. Everybody's excited about Jizzle. He's a guy that could have probably went to any school he wanted to. You know what I mean? I couldn't imagine what kind of messages and people back channels trying to get him to transfer to their school and what he got offered. I'm pretty sure. I think of the people that stayed, a lot of them took a little bit less, to stay in Cincinnati. That just shows how this coaching staff is able to, for these people to believe in this coaching staff, because, money talks and BS walks, and, people calling you and talking, I'm pretty sure it was 7 figures, or high 6, and, people are trying to get him to come over, and he's staying with, he got unfinished business in Cincinnati, which just shows for the character this guy has. It also shows, what Wes Miller and them are building, man. People believe in Wes Miller, like you said earlier, Meach. They believe in him. When people hear him speak, it's genuine. Some people he could be a Dabo Sweeney. He's not that kind of guy. He's one of those dudes that, you know what I mean? Like Dabo Sweeney, cookie cutter dude. He's going to say some quote that he found in a book, you know what I mean? Or he found online real quick and then use it. Like, that's not Wes Miller. Like, this dude's boots to the ground. And to keep somebody like Jizzle James just shows, what type of dude this guy is. And the staff, the Chad Dollars, the Trey Morgans, those guys are people that these guys respect and love.
I had a conversation with Jizzle recently, and I told him, first of all, as a former player and as a Bearcat fan, I'm glad that he returned. And I told him, I said, leave here as a Bearcat legend. You will always be loved in this city. And he smiled. He says, I'm down with that. Now, as we talk about someone else from, this area, we're going to talk about several players from the greater Cincinnati area. Neil, I want to jump into CJ Frederick, a grad student this year, had some issues with some health and almost his whole career. But he's a very high IQ guy, a veteran guy, has a calming effect on the court. Thoughts on CJ Frederick this year?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what CJ Frederick can really provide from this team, because everybody knows that he's a 3-point shooting specialist. I think I saw a report the other day, or like a image, like a graphic, that people forget that he's still, despite this being his 6th year and battling injuries throughout his career, he's still a guy who is shooting nearly 40% from behind the arc. And if you look at all the guys playing in college basketball, I think they had him ranked number 6 right now at field goal percentage throughout their career. So overall, you look down and you see that, you're still kind of excited about that. But despite battling the injuries, I think CJ Frederick could be that guy that could come off the bench this year and could really get you a couple points in a flurry when you need it. And I mean, we know the shooting ability, but overall last year we didn't get to see much of him, battled by the hamstring injury, and he was just banged up for majority of the year. But overall, we saw what he was able to do when he was on the court in this kind of offense, in this scheme under Coach Wes Miller. But a big thing that people don't really give him the credit for that he deserves is he was a great defender last year when he was on the court as well. He kind of allowed things to open up and was a really great defender as well. So overall, I think it's going to be an interesting CJ or season for CJ, but it could be a season that's interesting in a very good way, especially if he is able to stay healthy and then really provide some shooting from behind the arc. Because obviously we saw it versus Ohio State when the team shot 50% from 3. And that's CJ Frederick not even hitting one of them. So overall, if CJ Frederick is able to come in and knock down some couple shots and help this team in the scoring offense, think it will be a bright season for CJ Frederick if he can stay healthy and provide the scoring aspect that they are anticipating him to.
Listen, I'm always rooting for local guys. I root for all the Bearcat players, but I'm really always rooting for the local guys. I root for CJ Frederick so hard that he stays healthy, man. He's such a great kid, and just he's staying positive with all he's been through. And another guy that I root for like crazy, and I loved his mentality last year. And it was great to see him make a 3-point shot, his first shot in the scrimmage against Ohio State. And that is redshirt freshman Rayvon Griffith. JT, thoughts on his role this year?
Yeah, Rayvon. I mean, he's one of those guys. A lot of fanfare coming in and being a local guy from down the street. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He's an inner Cincinnati kid. He's a city kid. So to see him make it to this stage, then having the red shirt and taking it in stride, like most people, you could always have that, like, dang, this is messed up. I mean, maybe he did have those thoughts, but on the sideline, you never thought that. Like, that just shows to like whatever the staff said to him. Like, he believes in what they're pitching. Which is good. I think he's going to be a guy that, with his energy and athleticism, and just him on, like, I just want to see him on a fast break consistently. Like, just get out and go. I just think he's going to get so many buckets in transition, just because that's just the type of dude he is, that everybody's just going to love him because of that. But I think he can be one of those guys because he's 6'7", hyper athletic, and he will compete on the defensive end. Wes Miller, said, he's just one of the most aggressive guys all summer. So I think just him just being that local kid, having that aggression, I mean, he might be one of those guys that, is vying to be the John Newman of the team, and it's going to be interesting to see.
Love that.
John, he's that guy that he might not score. Wasn't scoring 20. I mean, sometimes he would, but he wasn't consistently scoring, 20, 25 points, right? But he would have, he might have a game where he shot terrible, but he had 10 points and 9 rebounds, 3 steals, a couple assists. So, I just think where Rayvon, he could possibly be that energy guy. Because I don't think the pressure's on him as much as it would have been on him last year. So I think he's going to be a guy that can just come in, be energy, go balls to the wall, pause while he's in there, and then, go onto the bench, come back, and do the same thing. Just recycle. So, I'm expecting him to be a very solid piece on this team.
I think with Rayvon, his energy is infectious. The fan base will love his style of play.
Yeah,
there'll be times where this team gets down. The schedule's so tough. In games, they'll get down, and Rayvon will be the spark to bring this team back. He just plays with such a high energy level on the court that he'll make a lot of mistakes just still because he's a redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
But you can deal with those mistakes because of his effort. it's at such a high level, right? And you just have to sometimes deal with that as a coach. So imagine when he starts to figure things out and it matches up with that energy level, man, watch out. And I heard during the preseason, no one was rebounding the basketball like Rayvon Griffith. And that's something every team needs, Neil.
Yeah, and that's something too. It's a great point there, Meach. That was something Wes Miller even mentioned in a press conference. Rayvon Griffith was the team's leading rebounder on both the offensive and the defensive side of the glass. So overall, once you kind of heard that from Wes Miller early in October, got you a little excited there for what Rayvon Griffith could do, especially here in his hometown, growing up in Cincinnati. Like you guys mentioned, I think maybe last season he might have had a little bit more pressure on his back as a freshman, so that's where the red shirt comes into play. But guys, his energy is so infectious, and when you have that kind of energy, it could change a game in many different ways. And we saw it last year. I mean, the first guy off the bench during timeout celebrating was Rayvon Griffith. So overall, when he gets that excitement out there and that energy, and he plays with a high motor, everybody knows that. But overall, when you have somebody with that kind of energy, especially leading the team in reboundings on both ends of the ball, it's going to be very exciting to have.
And I think he's a high character kid. And I want to give a shout out to Trey Dees. Trey Dees has been a part of Rayvon's life from the infant stage till now. And he's just always been around him. Rayvon has a great support system around him. I think that's one of the reasons he handled the situation last year so well, having a great support system. Shout out Trey Dees for what he's doing for Rayvon. Now, Neil, I want to step back to you here and talk about Connor Hickman, senior Connor Hickman. And I'll be honest, I didn't know much about Connor coming into this season. I've watched a couple practices and just kind of learning Connor's game. And I was trying to figure him out. Your thoughts on Connor Hickman for this season?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we can take away with Connor Hickman is the guy can shoot, but he can also get up and dunk too. I mean, JT had the famous question that went viral for a little bit there in the press conference about what he was able to do and provide on offense, and if teams really could see his athleticism yet. And throughout the fall session there in the open practices and whatnot, and he was like, man, people don't think I can jump because I'm 6'2", white with a comb over. Then he tells us a story about how he put Rayvon Griffith on a poster already. So overall, I mean, people think he's just a shooter, but he can really affect the game in multiple different ways. He can drive. He's quick. He's freaky athletic. And I think people don't really realize that yet. But Connor Hickman's got a 44-inch vertical. And when you look down and see a point guard
40.
40. Jizzle James has the 40 or 44, but either way.
That's where I got the question. I saw that. Yeah. My bad to break you up on that one. Yeah, it's 40.
But yeah, you look down at the backcourt.
I'm going to say 44. Dang.
Yeah, you have three guys who are in the 40s in vertical there in the backcourt. So, but overall, Connor Hickman, everyone knows he can score the ball. We saw it with Bradley last year. He was a guy we actually talked about on our podcast last year. So overall, he's a great spot-up shooter. And I mean, we saw it all throughout last season with Bradley, and then we saw it throughout the summer and the fall workouts. But he's a guy who can come in and really contribute this season. I know from what John Rothstein reported from CBS Sports, feels like Connor Hickman could come in and potentially start. But obviously there's only 5 positions out there. But Cincinnati's got legit 3 guys that they could start at point guard and be very content with the addition of Connor Hickman.
And one thing I loved about Connor Hickman from the Giddy Up was when he had his press conference. I have not seen a Bearcat basketball or football player handle a press conference as well as him. I mean, every answer he really answered the question, which is hard for young people to really dive in and give you like that microscope answer. He was so mature in all his answers, man. I was very, very impressed with Connor Hickman. I could see him being a coach in the future, hopefully with the Bearcats. Now, JT, a guy that, I wasn't sure he was going to come back this year. I thought he was a guy that would jump in the portal, and that is junior Josh Reed.
Yeah, same, man. We talked about this on our final podcast. We had to assume, and I thought the same thing. But as the piggyback off Rayvon, different type of game, of course, but he's one of those guys that, with him returning, I think he has a chance to be, if he's going to etch out minutes, he's going to have to be like that John Newman type of player, which he was kind of morphing into last year. It's just that, his shot was a little inconsistent last year. So I think, you know, I've heard nothing but good reports, for during the fall and the summer. So I feel like, he's going to be one of those guys that he doesn't care who he guards. He got the dog mentality when he's guarding somebody, which you can't, he's a selfless dude. So I think he's going to be one of those guys that, when Houston has somebody rolling, if he's out there, he's not going to be scared to guard, the Hersey Miller. The thing is, it Hersey or Percy? Which one of the Master P kids is that?
There's so many Master P kids out there.
Because he got two. That's like, one is like, I think maybe a senior or a junior.
I think
he was at Louisville last year. I don't know if he was Hersey or Mercy. One of them.
I think this is Mercy at Houston.
Yeah, Mercy.
I think it's Mercy. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if he's gonna be the man, but I mean, I think he's gonna be. That kid might be somebody that's in a rotation. But he, like, if you tell Josh Reed to guard Mercy, he's gonna guard him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's one of those dudes. So I just feel like it's just gonna be nothing but positive, minutes. Is a lot of times last year he gave the Bearcats some positive minutes people didn't expect. So I think he's gonna build off that, and just it'll be what it is. It just shows how deep this Bearcats team can be and will be.
And Neil, I want to combine two players, and I want to talk about it from a standpoint of what these two players do for the Bearcats in practice. One in particular, I'm going to give him his flowers before I let you talk, and that's the two players I want to talk about are C.J. Anthony and J.J. Rimbart. Is that how you say his last name? Rimbart? Rimbart?
Yeah.
So I wasn't even sure how you say his last name. J.J. I just always call him J.J. First of all, C.J. Anthony, I mean, you talk about a guy, he's a senior, has been selfless, works so hard in practice, and gives these guys a good look at the opposing team's guards. He always knows what he should be doing. He's strong, has a great attitude. And I've always just been super impressed with C.J. Anthony. I want to make sure that, he gets the flowers he deserves. I know Wes Miller has talked about him in press conferences before, and rightfully so. But C.J. Anthony and J.J. give them great looks in practice. Neil, any thoughts you want to add on to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're talking about C.J. Anthony, I think people kind of forget what kind of scorer he actually was in high school. Like, this was a guy who was over 2,000 points in high school. I believe he broke LeBron's State of Ohio scoring record, if I remember right. So overall, this is a guy who, let's be honest, guys, he could be starting at most MAC schools, maybe even some higher schools at the Division I level, despite being a walk-on here at Cincinnati. Like, CJ can get you buckets. People know that. Like, that's what he does in practice. Like, we see it all the time. But he's a great attitude. Comes to practice, great attitude. I swear, I feel like every time we have seen CJ Anthony around the facilities or throughout practice, always smiling, bringing the energy, going hard. So overall, I think that's a great thing. You want those guys as walk-ons to really kind of push your veteran staff and your veteran guys in the backcourt there. But CJ Anthony is a guy, like we said, could be playing at probably most MAC schools, maybe even some higher offers there. On scholarship, not even as a walk-on, but on scholarship. But the fact he decided to stay here as a walk-on and really be a key part to this team that goes unsung, like you said, Alex, like people don't really give the walk-ons the credit where they deserve it. But CJ Anthony has been here now for 4 years and has done a fantastic job throughout his career. And then JJ, people might kind of doubt him because of his size, but guys, he can really shoot the ball too. A little left-handed, he's crafty. He can really shoot the three ball. So overall, that's another big reason why Cincinnati took him on this staff as well. And another guy who's just always out there, very positive, having fun, bringing the energy. So overall, the two walk-ons in the backcourt there are two guys that should get more credit than people really kind of are giving them credit for.
Now, JT, a freshman that I'm really excited to watch because of his ability to shoot the basketball and be 6'8" and shoot the basketball the way he does, and that is Tyler Betsey.
Yeah, man, Betsey. Everybody's high on Tyler Betsey. I think Mike Rayfield, the strength and conditioning. I don't know. I forgot his legit title, because it's like director. Isn't he like director of strength and conditioning now? He's like the super strength and conditioning guy. But like he showed like his before and after like a Betsey. Once he got his hands on him, pause. You could just see the improvement, of the young man. He was already a solid kid, so it's like, he's 6'8" and he's probably like what, 225.
Wow, they got him up to like 230.
That's what I thought, but I was shorting it. So like you got him up there like that, he's a kid that can finish at the rim. Everybody says he can shoot the nets off the rim. And what has the Bearcats always lacked, right? Shooters.
Yep.
Shooters. So now, not only has Wesley Miller got more athletic, he's gotten more shooters. So it's one of those things where I think with his size and skill set, like he's going to have to see some time on the floor. And I think Fifth Third Arena is going to like him a lot.
And as you think about shooters in the past, you look at guys like Darnell Burton from back in the day, Field Williams. I think about when I watch Tyler shoot, I think about Field Williams. Obviously, Tyler being 6'8", a lot bigger. But when you look at guys like Field and Darnell that could really fill up, there have been many, Lizelle Durden, Steve, and all that, but guys with a little bit more height. I could see him playing a huge role, being able to stretch out that defense with his ability to shoot the basketball. Now, JT, I want to stay with you. Did you want to add something else with Tyler?
Nah, for sure, man. The Bearcats haven't seen the potential that he has. Bearcats haven't seen this like a 6'8" guy that can shoot like that. Maybe since DeMar.
And people forget to chime in on that. We're hearing rumblings throughout the summer that this is a guy that went 42 from 50 behind the arc in one practice. So think about that kind of shooting in Fifth Third Arena.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm definitely excited. And another newcomer that a lot of Bearcat fans are excited he should have been at UC from the giddy up, but now, right? Sophomore Arrington Page. JT, let's stay with you and thoughts on Page.
Okay, so Alex, I'm gonna answer this almost like a two-player answer. Okay. That's how important Arrington Page is right now for this team. So I'm going to touch it. Far as like get well, Tyler McKinley, because he tore his ACL, Cincinnati freshman. Graduated from Wynn Woods. He went away. When he went to Link for a year. He's this guy that Cincinnati and what's my other school? Not Winton Woods, but
Walnut Hills.
Walnut. He went to Walnut. I know a lot of kids that go there now, just from my son and stuff like that. But with him tearing his ACL, him having it like that young man was probably going to play. like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's going to get some minutes in. Arrington Page is very important because he's the guy behind Aziz Bandago, and he's a guy. I mean, he can shoot the face-up shot. He's very athletic. Like you said, he should have been here. This should be his second year at UC. But hey, when stuff went crazy at Southern California, I guess going to Southern California ain't bad for a year though. Like as a young man, but he should have came to UC first. He's a guy that can finish at the rim, has a face-up jumper. I think from what I've seen, he's pretty quick. As a 6'11" guy. Somebody that's going to be very important for the Bearcats run because, Aziz, the more Aziz is out there, the better. But he's going to need the rest sometimes, and Arrington's going to have to be the guy that pick up the slack. And I think he's going to be a guy that, with coming off the bench, is going to be very important for the Bearcats. I think he's going to make a lot of people excited that he just chose to transfer to UC.
And you talk about Arrington Page coming off the bench. The next guy I want to talk about definitely will not be coming off the bench. He will for sure be a starter. And if he's not your guy's starting lineup, when we get to that, we're going to have some issues. And that is junior Dylan Mitchell. Neil, thoughts on Dylan? I'll tell you what, real quick. This is my guy, man. This is my guy this year. Thoughts on Dylan Mitchell?
Yeah, first of all, just given the brief thoughts on Dylan Mitchell, obviously from the press conferences we have had, he is such a well-spoken young individual as well, too. And I think that's the biggest thing people are going to take away. Now, if you saw the press conference that we had with him last week, you would kind of get a better understanding about that. But overall, he's going to be a huge part for this Cincinnati team. And I mean, they made it a priority to get him here in Cincinnati when he was on his visit. And that he even opened up about the decision to come here. But you look at what he was able to do over the last 2 years at Texas. I mean, especially last year is where he saw the biggest jump down there in Austin was He averaged nearly 9 points and 7 rebounds last season for Texas. So that's a huge thing. And then you also bring in a guy in Dillon Mitchell who has been to 2 NCAA tournaments the last 2 years. So that's a huge thing because he knows what it takes to get to March and play in the NCAA tournament. But then you put him alongside Aziz Bandaogo there in the front court. It could get a lot of deflections and a lot of block shots between Dillon Mitchell and Aziz Bandaogo there. But for Dillon Mitchell, him coming to Cincinnati it was great to hear him open up and about really kind of lead to what it was like in the transfer portal and then his decision to come here. Because he even said earlier this week on his visit when he came here, he sat in Wes Miller's office for 4.5 hours about what Wes Miller's plans were for him, just getting to know Coach Miller, what Cincinnati could do for him and make him take that jump. And he was like, right when I took my visit, I knew this is where I needed to play. And then you saw it versus Ohio State in the charity scrimmage. He goes 7 for 7, 12 points. He goes down on the defensive end when Ohio State gets out and runs. He sends a block shot 6 rows up into the stands. Cincinnati pushes the other way the very next possession, and he turns it up with the alley-oop from Dan Skilling. So overall, a high-energy guy. He's going to be that guy who will score in the post alongside Aziz Bandaogo, Arrington Page. And I think that's what Cincinnati has really needed in the past that they didn't have. We saw flashes of it last year with guys like Odi Oguama and Victor Locken and the others there. But overall, Dillon Mitchell is going to be a guy who is going to see 35 minutes a game roughly if you can stay healthy and stay out of foul trouble. And I truly believe that. But he brings a lot to this table. But overall, that was probably the biggest key addition for Cincinnati this offseason. And he's garnering national attention as well coming out of media days. So overall, Dillon Mitchell is going to be a huge part for this Cincinnati team. It's going to be electric to kind of watch him develop and play this season. I know he's really excited to play in Fifth Third, and even kind of funny topic on that, Meach and JT was I kind of asked him. I was like, hey, like you played in Fifth Third Arena on an opposing side of things, then you get to play versus Ohio State. Like compare the two, and he was like, man, I went out for that jump ball last year versus Texas, and it got frightening in there. Fifth Third Arena gets frightening. Is how he quoted it. And anytime you hear that from an opposing team, especially in the Big 12, like if you have teams scared to come to Fifth Third Arena because of how loud the fans and the support that these fans give you, means you have something right in this environment at Fifth Third Arena and what Wes Miller is doing. So overall, to hear that from Dillon Mitchell as well was fantastic. But he's going to be the probably one of the key contributors, if not the key contributor for Cincinnati this season.
I think he is the key to UC's success this year. We talk about the NCAA tournament and making a run, and not only the Big 12 but NCAA. I think he is the key to that success. So versatile, potential pro. I'm really high on what I've seen from Dillon Mitchell at the practices that I've watched. So JT, I want to throw it back to you. We're going to talk about a senior who, he was hurt at the beginning of the year. One of the strangest things, being hit by a car. Went through a lot, foot injuries, different things. When we saw a healthy CMOS Lukosius, he was deadly. So coming into this year healthy, your thoughts on number 41? I got to throw that out there. Number 41, CMOS Lukosius.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about CMOS, saying he wanted to stay he had unfinished business. He's like one of those guys that feel like he had unfinished business because of how last year ended. And, he was hurt. I mean, the guy got hit by a car and missed one game? Like literally got hit by a car and missed one game. That just shows you how tough the young man is. And then, so I just feel like, you saw when he finally got rolling, he got his legs under him essentially, or got his legs healed. He was dropping, hitting 6 to 7 threes a game sometimes. So like he's one of those dudes, man. He can make plays for others. He can make plays for himself, and he's an unselfish player. So I think it could mean it could get scary. I think it's gonna get scary for other teams, and CMOS is gonna be one of the reasons it's gonna get scary for those teams because as long as we can keep him in bubble wrap, keep him cool, keep those cars away from him. I just feel like he's gonna be a guy that's double digits from the beginning. I think he's averaging with his team. They got so much firepower. I think he's still gonna be averaging 10 to 13 points, 4 assists, 3 to 4 assists just because like he's just so much talent on his team. But he's definitely one of the people that drive the car.
Now, a guy that I'm very interested to see his improvement from last year to this year is Aziz Bandago, going into his 5th year. Because there were times, and we talked about this on the pod last year, there were times where, I think strength was an issue. He was getting bumped around. He wasn't rebounding and blocking shots, I think, at the level that we wanted him to. And I know sometimes it was injury related. And even JT, we talked about this a million times, catching lobs. We were probably the worst lob throwing team in America. But when I went and watched some of those lobs, it wasn't always the fault of the person throwing the lobs. Aziz was getting bumped away.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He would go up and get bumped, and he's got to go through those. And Kenyon Martin went through that evolution of him being stronger. And hey, you threw a lob to Kenyon his senior year. Woo! Watch your head. So I'm interested to see the transformation of Aziz from last year to this year because he could be that difference maker. Neil, your thoughts?
Yeah, like you guys mentioned, I think that's the biggest thing for Aziz Bandago. I know we saw it at times last season where it looked like he wasn't really strong enough there around the rim there on the offensive side to go up and get you the offensive, the points and the rebounding as well. But I think that's been the biggest thing he's focused on the offseason there. I mean, he looks like he's put on a good 10 to 15 pounds of muscle this offseason there with Mike Rayfeld. So that's it. That's the first takeaway when you look at Aziz Bandago this season. You can see the difference from a season ago or where he finished the season to where he is now. Obviously, now fully healthy as well. Obviously, it sounds like that back injury was something that kind of lingered throughout the season that, not only sidelined him for almost a month during the season, but kind of was a thing that was nagging throughout the whole season. But that's the biggest thing is Aziz Bandago staying healthy. And then on top of it, you get the whole offseason with Aziz Bandago, not having to worry about what he went through last year.
Yep, that's good. That's a good point.
Obviously, we talked to him at media days, and he was very happy and very blessed to be in the position he's in now, especially after what he had to deal with last year. But overall, just a great positive vibes from Aziz Bandago. But he's going to be a huge part for this Cincinnati team, and they know they're going to need the production out of him. Everybody kind of knows he's an elite shot blocker and can be an elite rebounder. But for Cincinnati to be successful, they're going to need Aziz Bandago to stay healthy and Arrington Page to stay healthy as well in the front court, especially with the news of Tyler McKinley going to be out for the season. But Aziz Bandago is just about as important to this team as anybody else. I mean, you look down at the 4 and the 5 between guys like Dylan Mitchell and Aziz Bandago. Those are two of your most athletic guys on the team, and they're going to play huge roles. And let's be honest, not many teams are going to want to drive in the paint and then see a 6'9" Dylan Mitchell standing there and see a 7'1" Aziz Bandago there as well. So overall, those two people, especially Aziz, are going to be huge pieces to the Cincinnati team.
Yeah, and JT, you mentioned Tyler McKinley, and I'm glad you did. I spoke with Tyler several times. I texted him after, he had surgery, and he's doing well. He's rehabbing like crazy. So I know Bearcat fans wish him nothing but the best. And I'm telling you, Tyler is going to be a great Bearcat, and his trajectory just at the fall was, the coaches said it, like he was way ahead of what they thought he would be. And it's just unfortunate. And I told Tyler, I said, listen, injuries happen. That's sports. It's how you bounce back from it. And you need to attack this as hard as you've attacked anything in your entire life. And he's just a kid, man. He doesn't talk much. He puts his head down and works. You got to appreciate that about him. And shout out to his brother, Alex, who's been by his side this entire time. And, man, it's really kept Tyler's head up and keeping him pushing through. So excited to see Tyler bounce back. And the last person we haven't talked about, it was a late addition. And Neil, I want you to I'm not even going to try to say his name because you're the one that's, in charge of the name game. Late addition, freshman from, I believe, I'm not sure what part, but he's from France. Neil, you go ahead and say his name. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, Halvin Desalet. But it sounds like
a salad? You said a salad?
Desalet, yeah. The D's kind of silent, so it's like Zalet.
Whoa. Whoa. JT. Hey, we're not even one episode deep. Wow. All right, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
But
So Neil, yeah, you were a little late on the pause. Hey, so how
Shoot.
how did this come about? How did he? It was such a late addition.
yeah, it really was. But overall, I mean, you look at what Halvin was able to do on the U18 circuit over there in France. He was dominating the FIBA levels, but it was kind of interesting to see how it really kind of played out because Cincinnati knew if they could get him here and they could hit him with the red shirt in the first season that he could be a practice player. Obviously, Aziz Bandego has no more college eligibility left after this year, bearing on anything uncertain or crazy with injuries or, everyone knows how those things kind of work, anything crazy. But it was kind of important to get him here when they did because you get him to reclassify to the 2024 class, you get him to use the red shirt, put in the muscle. I think we just saw the transition from when he first arrived in Cincinnati from what Coach Rayfeld posted yesterday. They got him almost up to 240 pounds after being 220 when they got him here. So overall, you now get it sounds like the plan is for him to redshirt this year. So you get him to redshirt and then have him immediately transfer into the role of what Aziz Bandego did last year, or when Aziz Bandego leaves next year. It's going to be huge, but it's a big time addition because now not only do you add another 7-footer in the front court, but you're going against him every day on the practice kind of squad kind of thing with the red shirt, and you're getting ready to face guys like Hunter Dickinson or the bigs in the Big 12. Obviously, there's a lot of great big men in the Big 12, especially there. You have Ernst Uda out of Kansas State. You have Hunter Dickinson. So they get you. Halvin Dezalek kind of gives you that experience of having a 7-footer that you can prepare for in the Big 12. So it was an interesting ad, but it's going to be an ad that I think pays off near dividends in the future.
Well, I'm glad I have a whole year to figure out how to say his name. So let's talk about the staff here. We got to give a shout out to the staff: Wes Miller, Chad Dollar, Andre Morgan. These three. Let's just talk about these three guys to begin with. The continuity they have right now, just how they are on the recruiting trails. If you watch them in practice, how all three of them, obviously Wes Miller being in charge of everything, but just how they work together is so impressive. And you throw in Drew Adams and all of his connections on the recruiting side, Tim Buckley, who you hear stories over and over about his ability to help people transition their shots and just the skill level stuff. Jalen Stowe's been with the player development side. Huge respect from the players. Bill Comar, who comes over, chief of staff, who is the most meticulous person you will ever meet in your life. I've had to work with him on a couple nonprofit things, and he is meticulous, man. Just what the Bearcat basketball program needs. So very impressive staff. And now I want to transition into your prediction on the starting lineup for this Bearcat basketball team. I know we saw the starting lineup versus Ohio State, but is that your starting lineup for the rest of the season? JT, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'm going, Jizzle, Dan, Seamas, Dylan, Aziz all year. That's where it's going to be at.
Neil?
I would agree with that. I think everyone kind of knew heading into the season what this starting lineup could be, and seeing Jizzle James and the evolution that he has taken from year 1 to year 2 was huge. So you saw that jump there, and we kind of knew that he would be the projected starter there at the point guard position. But overall, I think you're going to see the Jizzle James, the Seamas Lukosius, Dan Skillings, Dylan Mitchell, and Aziz Bandego as your starting lineup.
Yeah, and I would agree. Listen, but there's a couple things I want to throw in there. I think coming off the bench, Day, Rayvon bringing that energy. But the one thing I could possibly see during the season, if they want to play a little bit faster and a little bit more athletic, even more athletic, I think, times you take an Aziz out of the lineup, bring him off the bench. And listen, I think Aziz obviously is a key piece. He's big, but it's all about matchup sometimes. And that could change the lineup. Now, the lineup that you guys have said, I agree with you 100%, but I could see times where Aziz could come off a bench and maybe depending on how Page is playing, he could step in that role. Shoot, if Tyler Betsy's shooting the ball at like a high clip, he could be a guy you throw in there at 6'8".
Yeah.
JT, thoughts on that?
Nah, he got flexibility. That's for sure. That's right now. Keep staying healthy. Knock on wood. This team got some people that he could throw. I mean, it's almost like a Tetris board. It's like moving pieces or a puzzle. You got so many pieces to place on the court. It's a different total talent team. That's no slight to the other teams he's had, but like this team right here he's got so many players that can be impact players like that's on this roster right now. It's very impressive.
My concern though, fellas, is you got a lot of guys you got to find minutes for. There are going to be some guys that aren't happy. There might be a guy or two that gets in the portal before the season's over, decides to head out because of playing time. And listen, Wes Miller gets paid a lot of money to figure this out. I think he's finally in that position, Neil, where it's like he has the players that he wants. Now he's got to figure out who's going to play.
Yeah, no, most certainly. And I think this is probably the kind of players that Wes Miller has been trying to recruit for the last few years when he took the Cincinnati job. But now that he has potentially 8 starters on a team of 15, and you have 8 guys who are capable of starting, obviously minute dividends are going to be something that kind of goes up and down throughout the season. But obviously people kind of know, like they know, I think these players kind of know too, like, hey, their role might be different this year. Some games, somebody else might have a good night and their minutes might get cut. But in the end, like we talked about earlier, that's the biggest thing we've been able to take away from these press conferences with these players is that they know what's at stake here and the talent that they have. But in order for them to be successful, that some people are going to have to sacrifice with hopes of getting back to the NCAA tournament. And, I mean, there's reasons why 6 of the top 8 guys came back despite having offers to go elsewhere in the transfer portal. So obviously they know that there's something special being built here. And then with the additions they had, minutes there's only 40 minutes in a college basketball game. So they're going to be scattered all over the place. But when you have 8 to 10 guys who are capable of starting, it's going to be interesting to see how those minutes get divided. But overall, I think that's not a bad thing to have if you're Wes Miller either.
And here's the beauty. They've got a lot of games in a non-conference schedule where you can get a lot of guys minutes right off the bat. And someone might step up and, coach could be like, hey, this guy's only going to play this many minutes. And then he watches them in the first 11 non-conference games and goes, this kid might need to play a little bit more. So the non-conference schedule, I think they've got a really, really good non-conference schedule. They play 11 games. Of course, they've got the 3 warm-up games, Nicholls, Morehead State, Arkansas Pine Bluff. And then you go at NKU, payback game, at Georgia Tech, Alabama State, at Villanova, Howard. December 14th is Crosstown Shootout, Dayton, and then Grambling. JT, thoughts on the non-conference schedule?
Man, so I feel like what's the first one that's just like it gets serious? Man, NKU's important. I feel like that's a very important game, and it's because of the last time the Bearcats were at what's the name of the dang
Truist Arena?
Truist, yeah. It was Bank of Kentucky Arena when I was covering them, so forgive me on that, guys. Let's listen to the pod. But last time the Bearcats, went to Northern Kentucky's arena, they lost. So and they scored like 52 points or something like that.
Yeah, and only had 11 points in the second half, if I remember right.
Yeah, they shot like 5 of 30 in the second half or something like that. Something atrocious. So that game, even though it's a Horizon League team, but still, Northern Kentucky's been legit since they turned to a D1 school. So it's a respectful rivalry. I mean, we haven't really played them enough to really call it like a true rivalry, but they're less than 15 miles away from each other. So it's one of those things where it's a pride thing. Even if the people aren't from here, they probably bump into the guys in the summer, probably playing Smith League together, stuff like that. So that game is one I have circled because it's going to be the first one that's kind of a test, and just to see how dominant this team is supposed to be. I mean, it's a road game, but it's not that far. But it's one of those ones that they standing on business like they're supposed to. They're supposed to go in there and beat this team by 15 plus. And I want to see what happens when that game comes along. So that's the first one I have circled. Then you kind of do you want me to add more that I'm kind of looking at, or just
what
that
would be
first one?
So if you look at the 11 conference non-conference games, what would be your prediction? What do you think the Bearcats need to finish in those 11 games? Like going into that December 30th Big 12 first game at Kansas State. So prior to that.
Okay, so I'm being selfish. I need 10-1.
Okay, where do you see the one loss?
Okay, so the one loss. Honestly, okay. The one loss. They gotta beat Xavier this year.
We're not losing to Xavier at home this year.
Not at home. Not at home.
We're not.
They haven't won it. They haven't won. West hasn't beat them yet. So this year they got to do it. The coin flip game to me is they beat Georgia Tech so bad at Fifth Third last year that if this team has any pride, that game's going to be tough for the Bearcats. I want to, no matter what. That's the game that I can see them losing because it's at Georgia Tech. We beat the brakes off of them.
Yep.
I mean, 30-something points. So that's the game I see them losing, but I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't lose either, if that makes sense. And I feel like I'm hedging, but that's the game that I feel like pride. I feel like a pride thing with the coaching staff. I don't know who's on the team this year, who stayed and who transferred out or whatnot, but when you get smoked by a team and then they come right back, I feel like a pride thing. You're not trying to feel that again. So that's the game I feel like the Bearcats could lose.
Neil, what do you think their record will be in non-conference?
Yeah, they're realistically, I see it only going one of two ways. Like JT mentioned, 10-1 or 11-0. There's a great realistic chance where Cincinnati could run the table in their non-conference. Obviously, Xavier's already dealing with some injuries. Villanova on the road will be a tough one. Dayton's dealing with some injuries as well. So overall, there's a chance Cincinnati could go 10-1 or 11-0 throughout non-conference slate. But for me, I think the only reason I say 10-1 is because the buildup of the crosstown shootout. That could be the only game where it could kind of go either way. Both teams are ranked in the top 25 to start the season. Well, Xavier's right outside the top 25, but overall, that's a big time matchup, especially with all the energy and the buildup to that game. Obviously, it's arguably the best rivalry in all of college basketball for a reason. And I mean, fans kind of forget the last time this game was played at Fifth Third Arena. Xavier was up 20 and then blew a 20-point lead. That was the game where David DeJulius hit that crazy 4-point play with like 5 seconds left or something to give Cincinnati a chance to win it. But overall, you know how those rivalry games can go, especially in those hostile environments like Fifth Third Arena will be for that matchup. So it's going to be interesting, but that's where I see that game could go to either team. It could go to Xavier, it could go to Cincinnati. So that's going to be the only questionable game I have in the non-conference slate. But there's no reason Cincinnati shouldn't be at least 10-1 coming out of the non-conference slate.
And I like this non-conference schedule because it allows you to have some games where you can build some confidence, get some players some time. But then you've got great challenges like you talk about it at Georgia Tech, out Villanova, crosstown shootout, the Dayton on a neutral court. That's going to help prepare you for Big 12 play, which starts December 30th. But let's go through the home schedule for Big 12 conference play. You play 10 home games. You got and this schedule is crazy. You got Arizona, Kansas, Arizona State, Texas Tech, West Virginia, BYU, Utah, TCU, Baylor, and Kansas State, all at home. I'm trying to think, JT, help me with this. Have we had a home, or even just add the non-conference schedule home games? Have we had a home schedule like this?
No, this is very, very Big East-ish of us right now. Very Big East-ish. I don't know if I can say that 3 times fast in a row, but
I wouldn't be able to.
Nah, I can't do it. Can't do it. But it's the same type of grind. You just think of like when Mick Cronin was building up, building the Bearcats back up when Huggins left. They got to that point. It was murderer's row. Like you win a couple games and you could lose a couple games because you're just playing such quality opponents. And last year was similar, but now with the addition of, Arizona State, Utah, Colorado. I don't know if Colorado's that good this year on the basketball side, but Arizona's always a team to reckon with. Arizona State's up and down, but Utah has been solid. So, it's already the best basketball conference in college. And now the Bearcats have to play, even without Texas and Oklahoma, it's still some real gangster basketball being played in the Big 12. And it hasn't been like this since the Big East. This is giving me real good Big East vibes. Every game matters. Even the teams that come in, if the team comes in and they're at the bottom of the conference, they can beat you. Like that's something that in the AAC we really weren't worried about. And it would just be about if the Bearcats are playing good basketball more than anything. But it doesn't matter if Oklahoma State comes in here and they're 5-12 like last year. You saw what happened. They beat the Bearcats, and they still can. This team could come in and beat them again, or they're out on the road. So it's going to be crazy. And it's like I know me and Neil talked about this. It's not 18 games this year. It's 20 games in the Big 12. So you got 20 games automatically. What 31 games minus any kind of tournaments. So it's just going to be one of those things. It's going to be a grinder. That's why the first 11 games are so important about finding a rotation, getting everybody playing time. So if any injuries do happen, people that weren't playing have had legit quality minutes, so they can come in there and it be like riding a bike per se.
Yeah,
and I think real quick, Neil, I think one of the things too that's so very important when you have a tough schedule, both home and away, it's so very important that you hold down your home court. That's like crucial, right? And when I look at the 10-game schedule, I'd be happy with them, finishing it up 8-2, because there are 2 games on here, that are just it's just great competition. You're probably going to lose 2 games, unfortunately. I'd love for them to be 10-0, but I think 8-2 is realistic.
Yeah, that sounds legit. Because like if you go 8-2, 80%, that's fair. You hold down a non-conference. Then on the road, if you can split at least on the road and then maybe be a little bit better, out of your 10, you can go 6-4. If you can be 5-5, I just feel like you're just playing. You're in a good space. Winning 13 games in the Big 12. Hey, that's great. And I think that's something that you want to have. I think 12 to 14 wins in the Big 12 with this team is very doable, but it's going to be a grind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, like you mentioned, JT, obviously the difference between 18 to 20 Big 12 games, guys, you look at the home schedule. I mean, your first 2 home games in the Big 12 this season are number 8 Arizona and then number 1 Kansas. Like that's something that's really unheard of in any other conference outside the Big 12. And I mean, there's a reason the Big 12 is so good for the reasoning is because you have 5 teams in the top 10 right now in the first week of college basketball season. Houston's up there, Kansas is up there, Arizona's up there, Baylor's up there. Overall, there's going to be a lot of talent in the Big 12. And I mean, you look down at the home schedule when you have your first one versus Arizona. And I mean, guys, the last time UC played Arizona, look what happened out in Maui. I mean, that was probably one of the best games of this decade so far for Cincinnati. That was the game Landers Nolly went crazy from the 3. So overall, I mean, it's going to be a gauntlet. It's going to be a gauntlet. But as you guys mentioned, obviously, it could go a lot of different ways in the non-conference because of the teams that are on the schedule, like the Villanova, the Daytons, the Xaviers. And then on top of it, Big 12 play. I mean, you're playing a top 25 team every night. And the fact is you have 20 opportunities to play a top 25 team every night, essentially in the Big 12.
Let's jump into the 10 non-conference away games. All right. So The interesting thing about the schedule is the two bookends of the conference for the Bearcats on the schedule are away games. Okay, so we start Big 12 play on December 30th with Kansas State, and we end Big 12 play with Oklahoma State on the road. And in between that, you've got Baylor, Colorado, BYU, Utah, UCF, Iowa State, West Virginia, Houston. A lot of tough games. And JT, I think you made a great point. If you can finish that 5-5, I think that's a victory right there in itself and hold down home court advantage.
Yep.
You're in good shape because you look at like the Colorados, the BYUs, the Utah, the travel that's involved in that, man, to go all the way out there. It's just, those are just tough games, man. And probably teams we could beat, but you never know being on the road. So my thought is, and I agree with you, is if we can finish 5-5, I'd be happy with that, JT.
Not for sure. 5-5 on the road is kind of like what I'm looking at, like in general, just because it's tough, man. The travel, no bye weeks this year because of the 20 games, and that's fine. But I just think 5-5 is doable. But that's, if they can do that, they're going to be where the fans want them to be and where the staff wants them to be, because where do they want them to be? They want them to be not in the NIT this year. They want them to be playing for in March Madness. So in the NCAA tournament. So you go 5-5, that means you're holding down the fort. What we don't want is not holding down home court, and then you go 5-5 or worse, on the road. Then we're in trouble. Then we're kind of scrambling. But I think 5-5 is realistic, and I think the 8-2 is definitely a realistic thing, because you got to take advantage of your home court games in this conference, because if you don't, you're going to put yourself in a position they were in last year where, it's a couple games they could have won. They lose by a couple points, and it comes back to bite them in the backside. So hopefully they learned from last year. A lot of the core is back. You get those bugs out the way. And I think this year they got nothing but positive, positive vibes, positive, experience. But it's just they got to do it on the court too. But I feel you on that. I say 5-5 on the road, 8-2. So that's what, 13-7 in the Big 12. You damn sure a top 7 seed, probably a top 5 seed, honestly.
Yeah, it's a good thing you mentioned too about the road games, because one thing that really sticks out to me about the road scheduling is you look, the Texas Tech games on January 21st, and then you see January 25th is at BYU. And then January 28th is at Utah. So they have a whole week to spend roughly out in the mountains in Utah to prepare for those games, especially with the different climate change, the altitude level. That right there stood out to me about in terms of scheduling. Now, I don't know if that was on UC's end or how the Big 12 scheduled it, but that's an important week right there for Cincinnati. And I thought that, obviously, everyone knows the travel scenarios in the Big 12. You're going to go to 3 different time zones, especially there with no bye weeks. But to have a whole week out in Utah in the middle of the season is kind of nice if you're Cincinnati, so you don't have to go from Utah to Cincinnati back to Utah at one point. With all the traveling, they get to stay out there and kind of get used to everything between the time from BYU and Utah. So that was something that really stood out to me about the non-conference slate. But like JT mentioned, you have to take care of your home court. But even if you can find a way to go 5-5 in the non-conference slate, or not the non-conference slate, on the road in the Big 12 play, or if you can find a way to go 6-4 or 7-3, you're in great hands right there.
And if you look at it and you calculate this up, let's say that the non-conference, I know JT, you mentioned 10-1. Let's just say you even go 9-2. You go 8-2 in conference home games, 5-5 in conference away games. That puts you at 22-9. If they went 10-1 in non-conference, like you said, JT, that put them at 23-8, right?
Yeah.
So that would, I mean, man, that's sitting pretty with that type of schedule. Then that takes the pressure off of Big 12 conference tournament, right?
Yeah.
Which is Kansas City. I know, Neil, you were recently out in Kansas City. So if you look at that Big 12 conference tournament, March 11th through 15th, I think if you can get in there healthy, you've seen everybody play, you've played everybody, you never know what could happen in a conference tournament, right? You go in healthy and confident, you could leave out there a conference championship, champions, and then now you've got, so much momentum going NCAA tournament. But I think taking the pressure off of having to play so well in the Big 12 conference tournament is important. And Neil, you just got back from the Kansas City Media Day recently.
Yeah, and that's a great thing you mentioned that, because I'll say one thing. Aziz Bandaogo has made it known when he saw that Big 12 championship belt that he made sure to get his hands on it because he knew how bad he wants to bring that back to Cincinnati. I mean, I caught him actually kind of by himself, kind of admiring the belt, and he was like, man, this belt's cool, but we're going to bring this back to Cincinnati kind of thing. So we made sure to ask him about that in the environment. But Kansas City, everybody knows the Big 12. It's going to be a gauntlet, and the Big 12 conference tournament, I mean, we saw it last year. Cincinnati made a deep run in the conference tournament, and that was despite not even being fully healthy either. They get a huge win over Kansas. Just shows that any night is a given battle in the Big 12. It's who's going to want it more for 40 minutes. So, and I mean, I'll say right now, I don't think I've seen Aziz Bandaogo with a bigger smile on his face than when he had that belt in his hands, to get that feel of what that Big 12 championship could potentially feel like, especially for the Cincinnati team with what they have right now projected on paper.
I think I'm going to go to the tournament this year in Kansas City. I'm pretty excited about that. I haven't been to a Big 12 conference tournament. So after the Big 12 conference tournament, obviously this team will get ready for the NCAA tournament, and I'm speaking it into existence. This team will be an NCAA team. NCAA tournament this year will be April 5th and 7th for the Final Four in San Antonio. So mark it down, get your tickets ready for the Final Four. I know I'm a little too hyped. All right, so let's talk about the NCAA tournament and your predictions. JT, I already said it. I think this is an NCAA tournament team. Do you think it's an NCAA tournament team, and how far do you think they could make it?
For sure. Definitely an NCAA tournament team. I've been preaching that for a minute. Even before the AP came out, I was telling people, honestly, I think if they don't go Sweet 16, they haven't. Like, this is at least a Sweet 16 team, man.
Yeah.
It would take a crazy draw for them, to me personally, for them to not make it to at least a Sweet 16. Like, I'll be disappointed if they don't get that far. And that sounds crazy for a team that hasn't made the tournament since Wes has been here. But I think he's, amassed enough talent. The system's there. People are used to playing in the system. So, like, when you got 6 to 7 people that have played minutes that are back, and then you just assuming other people that haven't, it's just easier because it's the players are coaching the players, and the coaches are coaching the players. So you got two layers of coaching on the staff because of it. I just think this team can definitely. I do have Final Four vibes on this team, but I definitely think Sweet 16 for sure. Now, Sweet 16, Elite 8.
So JT, you're booking your tickets for San Antonio, April 5th and 7th, Final Four?
I wouldn't. I might have to. I might have to break bread.
Let's go.
Break some bread.
Neil, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm right there with JT. There's no reason for Cincinnati not to be at least a second round tournament team this year. Obviously, you look down and you see the talent on paper, but no reason that they should not be a round of 32 team at least. But this team has the potential to go to an Elite 8 or even a Final Four. I mean, there's a good chance Cincinnati could make a deep tournament run. I mean, you look at the early season March Madness projections right now. I think I saw last week that some analysis and reporters had them at a projected 5 seed heading into the season in the NCAA tournament. And I mean, that's a great seed if you're a Cincinnati fan. So overall to see that, but there's a good opportunity for Cincinnati to, if they handle business throughout the season, there's a good chance where Cincinnati could make an Elite 8 or a Final Four run due to the talent and the potential of this team.
If there's one thing I want to say about Bearcat fans, and that is they support Bearcat athletics. That's one thing I really, really appreciate and love about our fan base. And listen, there are going to be ups and downs this year with this basketball team because it's such a tough conference, right? And I don't think that's a commentary on the team itself because I think it's a very, very good team that's put together very well. They're very connected. Well, folks, this is a tough schedule, and there are going to be ups and downs. There's going to be adversity. And there's one thing, like I said, there's one thing about Bearcat fans. They're going to stick with Bearcats. They're going to stick with the Bearcat basketball team through and through. So I'm excited to see what we do this year. And, I don't necessarily have an NCAA prediction. I definitely think they'll make it to the NCAA tournament. And it's just, there's so much luck involved when you get to the NCAA tournament, because we've seen teams get there that you're like, who is this team? How'd they get there? And then they go on a run, right?
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it's being hot at the right moment, healthy, right? So can this Bearcat team be healthy, come March? Are they playing connected? Are they playing at a high level in terms of confidence? If they're doing all those things, JT and Neil, I agree with you. Could be a very long run. JT and Neil, quickly, can you give the Bearcat fans out there how they can go and find your guys' content?
Yeah, so I'll start. You can find me over with JT at the Front Office News, aka Cincinnati Rivals now. But you can also find me over at the Bearcats Blitz podcast. I do a couple pop-up shows with our good friend Jeff Trenenpool, so I'm kind of all over the place there. He goes by Sports with Strawberry Ice. So, yeah, you guys can kind of find me all over the place. You can find me at Twitter or X, whatever people might call it nowadays, at Meyer Neal 6 as well.
JT, I think Neil's on. We talked about this before. He's on every. I think he was on a cooking podcast the other day. He was on a weather podcast.
Van, for real. So, yeah, it's the same. So make sure y'all check us out, frontofficenews.com. Either go frontofficenews.com or go cincinnati.rivals.com. It's the same thing. But feel free to subscribe, man. For anybody that subscribes, put in Bearcats 30, you get a free month of subscription. So with hoops coming around the corner, take advantage of that free month. Forums got a lot of information. We got a lot of good content out there. And subscribe to our YouTube page. We're almost at 500, man. We creeping on the come up. I think we got 483, 484. So subscribe to the Front Office News YouTube page. Trying to get to 1,000 slowly but surely. So check us out. Me and Neil post a lot of stuff on there. And then on Twitter, I won't call it X. Just follow me at at _JT_Smith. And yeah, for sure, man. But we definitely take advantage of the free month and hit up our YouTube channel and subscribe.
If it's free, it's for me.
Yeah. That YouTube channel is free, so it's for everybody. So let's get us to 1,000. Get us to 1,000 so we can turn it up a little bit.
Let's get them there, Bearcat fans. And if there's anything Bearcat fans will do, and they will support, right? They will support you guys. So this concludes our 2024-2025 Bearcat season preview podcast. We'll be back November 18th with episode number 1. We'll have all our sponsors locked in. And we want to thank all the Bearcat fans out there for listening to another episode of the Bearcat Tip-Off Talk podcast. Go Bearcats.